Well, welcome everybody to another Montessori Lives, conversations with notable Montessorians. And this evening we have Zaure Vuk, and you are a pampering doula, Montessori Mama, and you're the voice behind Montessori Mama, which bridges Montessori education with postpartum healing and adult transformation. Wow, so much to unpack there. Um, but let's start with your Montessori journey. How did you discover Montessori?
Yes, thank you. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to just be here and share the stories of Montessori. I can always talk about it nonstop. So, my Montessori journey started possibly in 2012, and that's what I was expecting. And we had two things going on. I was expecting a baby while we were expecting a baby, and we decided to open a daycare. Well, just spoiler, please do not open a business when you're expecting a baby. It's a killer. But I remember, well, first of all, it was our first baby, and I kind of wanted to be the best mom I can, right? You want to do the right thing. You want to be a great parent. You don't want to do what your parents did, or most of what your parents did when you're growing up. So I was kind of looking for that way of becoming a parent that can best serve my children. That was the one thing. The other thing is that we knew we were going to travel. Like right now, we're in Edinburgh. We are based in Colorado Springs. We're in the States, but we've been on the road since January, studying in Australia. So we knew we were going to travel. And we wanted to have a homeschooling format for our children so that we are flexible. We're not connected to any of the school systems and everything. So we wanted that. And the third piece was that once we opened daycare in Boston, Massachusetts, actually in Cambridge, and in the backyard of Harvard and MIT, and we have all these professors, doctors, postgrad, postdoc coming in, who really value education from the early ages. They were like, "What curriculum are you going to use?" And we were like, "I don't. Well, we really don't know." And we decided to explore different. There was creative curriculum, all the strategies, all of those things, because it was a daycare. And we thought, well, my husband somehow knew about Montessori and he's a salesperson. So he's like, well, we probably will adopt Montessori. We're just starting. These are these infants. We know we're going to do music every day because our background is in music. But we don't know yet. We probably will explore Montessori when they get a little bit older. And I was like, what is Montessori? I'm originally from Kazakhstan and I moved to Boston when I was like 24, 25. So I didn't really know what it was. And I was like, well, if he's selling it, let me find out what that is. And I was just started the research. And I think right after my daughter was born, I came across this book. I think it was Montessori Method. And I started reading it. And I think I read it within like 4 days. And I think that was such a turning point. I feel like it answered all the questions I had at that point. Best parenting, curriculum for a daycare, homeschooling approach. I think all of that things were in that book. And I was reading, I think the first thing that grabbed my heart was the respect for the child. I think growing up in post-Soviet Union, I mean, I was growing up in Soviet Union, right? Parenting is very authoritarian and sometimes it's very neglecting because growing up in Soviet Union, you believe in the system and you believe that government system can do better than you as a parent. So it's that trust in the system. So sometimes you feel like you're not really within the family. It's just kind of my personal experience. And I felt like, this is very revolutionary. What does it even mean to give child respect without the child deserving it? In my mind, you always have to deserve respect. You have to earn it. And that little thing really grabbed my attention. And then the more I was reading, the more logical it became. I'm like, this makes sense. And my daughter was just right next to me. She was maybe like, I don't know, 20, 30 days old. And I felt like my whole world went upside down. So that kind of started. And I think within a year, I found myself in Gordon College outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and studying and taking my first training.
And what do you do now? Can you talk about the various roles that you have now?
Yeah, so 12 years later, I think we had daycare center. We actually expanded. We had 12 of them. And as administrator, I actually never went to the classroom. I took Montessori training probably twice in Boston. First one was in Gordon College, and then second one was in Cambridge Montessori. And I've so become sold out completely for this Montessori child-centered, respectful way of being with children that I wanted to integrate into our daycares. We had 5 to 7 centers at that point. They were very micro, maybe 30, 40 children in the class, in the school. So they were very small community focused, which is very Cambridge, Massachusetts culture.
Mm.
And so I think it started then. And I felt like the integration of Montessori in a daycare is challenging. It's very different than a Montessori school. And this is actually what kind of shapes my mission right now. How do we spread Montessori that becomes more accessible through other venues of child education, such as childcare, daycare, family daycare, childminders, nannies, and all of that? And I think at some point I had to accept it can't be that pure Montessori as I was dreaming about, as I saw in Montessori, as I was reading in books and Nante journals. I was like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing vision of having a Montessori classroom, but it's not sustainable to do it in a daycare situation. So uh, we created this Montessori inspired curriculum, which was open door Montessori, which kind of gave foundational pieces of Montessori philosophy, pedagogy, child development, things like planes of development, sensitive periods. And that was enough. I felt we were pretty in a good place to give 10% or 15% of Montessori to more children than we otherwise would have. And then also being an immigrant and having 4 children in America was very, I would say, mind blowing because I grew up in a community based culture where you are cared for when you have children, when you are pampered and you are brought meals that are not just lasagna or pasta, which is in America. It's soups. It's something that's very warming, very nurturing, very dense in nutrients. And when I was in Boston, I felt like, well, first of all, I was very isolated. There was no village, and I was observing more and more. And I think because Montessori have given me this, it doesn't give you information. I feel like it teaches you to observe. It teaches you to self-observe. It teaches you to apply it. I think outside of classroom, and I think that was my journey. I never went to the classroom, so I started using it as a parent, as a mom. So my Instagram is Montessori Mama, and then as being an immigrant and going through birth and postpartum in the Western culture, I decided that you know what, I think it's time for me to maybe support mothers during that sensitive period of pregnancy and postpartum, because I think 80% of our parents were like me, immigrants. So I started that exploration. What does it look like to do postpartum work and come into the family during this, which I understand now, fifth plane of development, constructive period of development of the adult, especially the mother, and really, if you think about it, it's definitely the sensitive period because it kind of checks off all the marks. There's hormonal changes, which is physiological changes, right? What Maria Montessori talks about when the planes are changing and switching. And it is a rebirth. I did extensive study on matrescence and heroine's journey that we go through when we have a child through my master's degree. And I felt like this is something that also applicable through Montessori lens. I think Montessori has become to me this framework through which I understand everything now. And not only parenting, which I think it really helped me to rewrite the nervous system and reparent myself. Honestly, my motto is like, don't parent your child, reparent yourself. Second, I feel like when I went to yoga school, I was blown away. We were studying yoga and I was like, this is Montessori. All of this is Montessori, freedom within limits. It was that the concept in yoga when you stand in asana, you have to hold the structure, but then you have to relax. It's just like that beautiful. And I just started seeing this everywhere. Then I started doing body work like craniosacral. And craniosacral therapy is that when you're not healing a person, you're not over a person, you connect with the innate wisdom within the body of that person and you create the environment and you listen, you observe, you witness, and you let the body lead the unwinding, the restoration and healing, basically. So these are like the biggest things that has expanded my understanding of what Montessori could be. And then the latest has been a pampering doula, which is pampering doula is the postpartum doula care that based on pampering. I think the physiology and ancient art of traditional care paired with my background, being raised in Central Asia in a traditional culture, really makes me an advocate of understanding that healing touch and healing presence, following the mother. Again, I'm not coming over the mother. I'm not coming as an expert. I'm coming with a humble attitude and heart to support and guide the mother the way that she wants to go. And that's like doula, I feel like right now is the perfect blend of everything. I can bring everything, all the parts of myself that I developed over the last 15, 17 years in America. I am an esthetician and cosmetologist, so I do facials and I do hair. I did Montessori. Montessori is very applicable in guiding the mother in becoming her own, identity and agency. But also, how do you care for the baby from day one? What does Montessori look like from day one? What does Montessori look like in care? So yeah, so these are the pieces I feel like I weave in, and it's hard for me to really define. Um, when people tell me like, "What do you do for life?" I'm like, "Well, I travel, and then I learn." I think these are the biggest pieces, and then of course having 4 children and exploring Montessori outside of concepts of classroom, and also Montessori not as a homeschool, even though it became a homeschool, but actually a parenting philosophy that
Mhm.
focuses on adult and transformation and spiritual preparation of myself is definitely the most important thing for me. I remember I was reading Montessori's, maybe it was the Secret of the Childhood. We were in Tennessee at that point. I was just sitting in a coffee shop, and it dawned on me, like Montessori never talked about this is how you raise a child or this is how you teach a child. It's actually about how you change yourself and get out of the way. And that was like a very turning point for me. And I think the right now I feel like it immerses or emerges into embodiment. And my new or updated version of Montessori is actually embodied Montessori practitioner.
Mm.
Outside of education, it's practitioner who practices it no matter where you are, whether you're in birth, whether you're in a postpartum, whether you're in a yoga studio, or I don't know, doing a body work. So that's kind of my Montessori journey at this stage.
Wow. That's so fascinating. Everything you've talked about. The old saying that takes a village to raise a child. So it sounds like what you're really aimed at doing is filling in the gaps that have been left by the loss of like traditional culture and village life in Western
Mhm.
society.
Exactly.
Um, you talked about the challenges of daycare in Montessori. Can you talk about a bit about why you think there are these challenges when Montessori started as a daycare in Rome, right? Why do we have these challenges outside of the traditional Montessori school?
I would love to share about that because it took me a while to figure that out because I did want to have our daycare to transition into Montessori school. And, layer by layer, I was uncovering the barriers to that. Well, first of all, of course, the price of the training. Daycare teachers don't get paid very, very much. And I feel like our daycare was one of the highest paying daycare centers, but it still was not enough to afford the price point of daycare teacher. So that was one of the barriers I thought. Second barrier was that the daycare teachers work year long. They don't have summer breaks, they don't have school breaks. They work year long. They might have 2 weeks vacation if they take it. If not, they just keep on working. Plus work day for daycare teachers usually is between anything between 9 to 12 hours a day. So that in itself becomes very, very inaccessible to a regular daycare teacher. Now, let's look specifically in America. In America, to become a daycare teacher, you just need one class, which is like child growth and development. You go to a local community college for 1 semester, you complete that, you work maybe in a daycare as assistant for maybe 6 to 9 months, you get your license, teaching license. That's it. You're a daycare teacher. So this low entry sometimes also means that people who come, usually the high school graduates, sometimes they don't even have associate's degree. And very rarely you will have people having bachelor's degree. Bachelor's degree, sometimes people in administration would go and pursue it because at that point they have finances at some point. Boston and Massachusetts is very good about scholarships, about financing, but honestly, even then, it's still very prohibitive because usually in a daycare, it's usually moms, sometimes it's single moms. So it's not only financial, it's like human resources are not there. Like you are raising your children, you're working full time. It's not possible. And then the other thing that I think the biggest revelation I had is the language. People who just completed high school or maybe just completed associate's degree, they don't have that language that we use in Montessori, which is kind of master's degree, right? It's very complex. It's full of lingo. It's very, very it's philosophical, which I love, which I was privileged and blessed enough to go into that and start immersing myself. But I was a daycare owner, so I had time. Plus, I was popping out babies, so I was always on maternity leave. Seems like, so I was reading a lot, and but daycare teachers. That was like I remember I would bring consultants, and we actually hired the Montessori curriculum director, and I remember we would watch videos, she would do webinars or she would do workshops, and I didn't feel the daycare teachers connecting. So that was another thing. And the basic, I think the foundational reason is that daycare teachers come there just for job. Not all of them, most of them come because they love children. But honestly, it's also sometimes it's something that they've done since they were high school children. They were babysitting, so they think I'll just go and babysit and get paid for it. It's just easy enough. And they really don't feel like they want to learn anymore, which is understandable. It requires a lot of time, energy, commitment, Montessori, right? So this is why we at some point we decided, we're going to be Montessori inspired. We had this Montessori onboarding, we called it Open Door Montessori, which the
Mhm.
key was that every new hire had to take that course, and that put everybody in the same plane and the same kind of language, understanding, and at least reference point. Like, okay, remember in onboarding you talked about this, so we kind of created this environment where they were able to implement and were able to do something that was Montessori, but without being burned out and or financially broken. And we did send out teachers to Montessori trainings. I mean, I tried it all. Unfortunately, they would then just get the certification and leave. And then another piece, we were inviting consultants all the way from California. We were really invested. We were investing hundreds of thousands of dollars to figure that out. And then the daycare culture, especially in Boston, I mean, Mark, you know Boston, it's Northeast, it's very like very straightforward. The attitude was like, who are you? Why are you coming from somewhere? You're not here with me. You don't know my story. You don't know my life. You're not in my life. How come you just come here, show up and tell me how to do my job or how to
Mhm.
set up my classroom? So the first phase was that when we had people from outside, it actually brought resentment. They're like, no, we don't want a Montessori. We didn't sign up for that. We love music part because our daycare was at that point rock and roll daycare. Now it's World Song Schools. They love the creative part. They loved coming from music, and they're like really, really felt like they're connecting through creativity. But Montessori was something too academic, I think, for them. And of
Mhm.
course, it was something that without knowing, I think that was our blind side, is that we would just come again right over. Like you need to know this instead of meeting them where they are. And
Mhm.
now with Montessori, Open Door Montessori, that's my target audience. I do want to create relationships with daycare and family daycares. I don't really look into Montessori schools. I don't connect with Montessori schools. My priority is childcare providers who are outside of the Montessori bubble. And I'm still testing. So right now I'm actually going for MACTI accreditation, and MACTI has standards. So how do I marry that Montessori with the daycare structure? I feel like one thing that I'm kind of going through right now, that's one of revelations that has been, is that through parenting, most of them are moms. And once they figure out that I'm a Montessori mom, and I share with them my story of actually lazy parenting, where it's stress-free because you empower the child to do things for themselves, and you observe and you connect, and it's about relationship and partnership rather than control and correction. So they connect with that a lot. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I want that for my child. And I want that. And then so they get that buy-in. And the second buy-in right now, I thought it would be like that mindful. And I think I shared a little bit before we hopped on the podcast, is that I'm leading with this personal transformation, which is huge right now. On social media, you see the embodiment, somatics, and I feel like this is my language right now for spiritual preparation for the adult, right? We talk about spiritual preparation, but what is it? Like, what exactly is this? And I've been on my personal kind of research, like, what is spiritual preparation in the Montessori world? And then when I look back, I mean, well, she probably was teaching mostly nuns or Catholic within the Catholic culture, right? Wherever she was in India or she was wherever she went. I feel like that was the infrastructure of education at that time. So spiritual preparation of a nun, if you think about it, what is that? Right? It's a service to the community. It's humility. It's connection to the divine. It's contemplative contemplative practices such as prayer, and services. So I feel like, okay, that was done and it's beautiful. And I think we still need that. But how do we connect that with like modern science? And that's where we talk about epigenetics, neuroscience, we talk about, embodiment, specifically in terms of repatterning and restructuring your nervous system, your attachment styles, your birth trauma. And that's where my postpartum comes in very strongly. And that's why I'm so passionate about 0 to 3. 0 to 3, I feel like the foundation. And we in Open Door Montessori, my vision is to do this interdisciplinary and also multidimensionally, meaning that when you care for the baby, and that was my journey, honestly, as a parent, when you care for the baby, when you care for the child in Montessori way, you inadvertently start seeing your own woundings and things that you didn't receive as a child. And you now give permission to do something you weren't given permission to do. Oh my gosh. And I actually sometimes feel that on a visceral level, in the body level, right now, even like having goosebumps. Sometimes when I say yes to my children when I wasn't allowed to do something, there's some like expansion within me. So I'm so really sold out for this opportunity within that sensitive period, within that matrescence and heroine's journey, when we go through huge transformation to bring Montessori principles of self observation, of regulation, and contemplative practices that will help. Because we talk about Montessori, and it's beautiful, and I love that. But then, how do you do that on a embodiment level? Because when I started homeschooling my children, I had all kinds of stories come up and triggers and my own ways of when I grew up. I knew it. I took training twice, mind you, right? But to actually filter it from the brain to my heart and then to my hands and to my body, that was a process and still is. Right now, my children grow. My oldest now is a teenager. That's another spiral of learning. So yeah, that's definitely where I merge all of those things that allowed me to take Montessori and see Montessori in other modalities such as body work, movement, postpartum care, yoga, and all of that.
Wow. You have so much energy and so many fantastic ideas. You kind of evoke Montessori in a way, because she was also somebody who had so much ideas and energy and life. And you really hit the nail on the head, I think, for around so many of the problems we see in Australia as well around long day care. Um, how does it work to get around the problems in traditional Montessori training? You mentioned one avenue was to approach educators like parents, and you know, some of what you said sounded a lot like positive discipline, Jane Nelson's work. Are you familiar with her work?
Yeah, yeah. I think I did online workshop, but I sometimes saw the videos and that experiential piece of it. Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
that was powerful.
Yeah, we're learning through role plays and Socratic questioning. Yeah, so I think
Also, I feel like there was like a piece of I don't know if you know family constellations.
yes,
Like when you put yourself in the feet like whatever foot of your children, and you actually feel that what they would have felt if they are dressed certain way, if they are treated certain way. That's like almost that family constellation integration of the family parts within yourself too. Like you were
that's
that child.
true. Yeah, I've never thought of that. The similarity between positive discipline and family constellation work. Yeah, that's so insightful. Um, So what are some of the other ways that you get around those problems in traditional Montessori training that you talked about, the time commitment and the language and um,
Yeah, so right now I think I did a year of beta testing, working with a couple of daycares in Boston, and my model was that it's a hybrid. So we do online modules and then we do in-person retreats, I call them, because we have to do residencies up to like 80 hours right now in person.
yeah.
So I my first biggest commitment is that it doesn't have to be with a just individual teacher. It has to be with an organization.
Mm,
I think it's important to have that systems approach. When we approach it systematically, understanding that there has to be organizational change, and within the organization create this micro. I mean, when you go to a training, you create relationships, you create friendships, right? You create this subculture of like, oh, and connection with those students that are on the same journey, that you meet outside of the classroom, that you actually hear stories and you hear their lives. And then we bond and then we come back to our schools. I'm like, well, can we actually create it within the organization? So that's my first thing, my first inclining, because that's what we did. I feel like with Open Door, I'm creating the model that would have helped me as an owner of multiple sites in Boston, Massachusetts. And within that also, I feel like it would be very important to connect parents and teachers. I talk right now like how important it is actually to normalization to happen at home. What would happen if normalization is at home?
mhm,
And if the teachers actually enjoy teaching or having or supporting that learning component without spending and investing a lot of time and energy to normalize children. Um, which normalization I feel like I translated into the daycare language is just feeling safe. What does it look like for a child to feel safe, to be able to explore? Because otherwise, if they're in survival, nobody's learning anything. So that's another piece. Like, how can we bridge parents and teachers? Well, with the 0 to 3, I'm actually throwing in birth workers, birth doulas, and
mhm,
patient consultants, and also postpartum doulas. So that's one thing. Another thing, the online component is broken in modules that are very condensed, but they're like little trays, self-contained. So it could be newborn care, it can be mindful adult, it can be we do actually a lot of music. So our Open Door Montessori, one of the biggest things is music. So we developed this Fiddle Folks World, Fiddle Folks curriculum, which is very Montessori, and it's folk music from all over the world. So
mm,
and then also there is the child development, just looking at the child development through Montessori lens. So they take these modules and they can take them as they go. It's not, it doesn't have to be, I mean, ideally, it's not really linear. They can take one module, they can skip another, they can come back, they can retake it again. So the subscription model that I'm working on addresses two of the main questions that I had, is that it allows the daycare to have all the teachers enrolled at one of the fee that subscription allows. And it also allows teachers to go within their own pace, because
mm,
subscription model is ongoing. You don't have to like, oh gosh, I have to invest this $10,000 for training of one teacher. No, you're actually creating the environment and structure around the teacher's self-agency. And of course, it also partnership with me and my instructors, who I actually call them facilitators. And I'm empowering them. There's this entrepreneurship, I guess, within me. I'm empowering and telling them, you know what, you're not here just to teach, you're here to entice them. You are that Montessori
mm,
teacher, like Montessori would say, you have to seduce the child and entice them, right? And follow out that interest to connect with the materials. You have to have that personal relationship with the child. So it's like, I'm like, it's the same with adults. How can we interest them? How can we meet them where they are? For some people, parenting was very resonating, so it's easy. But many of them are not really parents yet, and they're like, I really, it's good, but what what resonates with them? So I think relationships is very important, and meeting them where they are and having the language that's not so Montessori, not Montessorianese. So these are the two things that I've kind of set out to test. Right now, I'm testing actually another model that I will have subscription only for the first layer. So there's layers in the spirals. So first layer is that preliminary training where they just learn a little bit about that onboarding training, practicum, and they attend one of the retreats. if they can. That would be wonderful. That's when they practice materials. Daycare teachers want actionable, practical ways of implementing right away. Otherwise, like, I don't have time for this. I don't have time to think what is, Montessori philosophy. If they see the results right away, they get their buy-in. And one of the things that I'm also considering is that what if we actually start with practicum for the daycare teachers? It doesn't have to be full practicum. It can be supported, supervised practicum, but it might need to be that way because they need to see practical applications. They need to see results right away. And Montessori can be that. And just, I had actually two new family daycares from New York. And one of them just created Peace Corner and it rocked her world. It absolutely rocked your world. And then I take that and I talk to my facilitators. I say, can you imagine 48 children are receiving more Montessori now because of you? So it's so interconnected. And I feel like in Montessori training, it's still hierarchical in traditional. It's like, okay, we have this, teacher instructors, then you have students, and it's like very top down. It's still very traditional. And I experienced that. I was taught at 3 or 4 teacher trainings I took, 2 in person, 3 online. And then I felt like my first experience was with TIES, with Dr. Gain, the Institute of Educational Studies, the master's program that I did, when they really created this environment where we had our own responsibility and our own process, and they were guiding us with grace and patience and yeah, and just it was really interesting because we used to having told what to do. It's very unnerving to have freedom sometimes as an adult. And to me, it was another layer of unlearning. What does it look like to be a student in Montessori? I learned what to be a mama. I learned to be an administrator. Um, I learned to be a doula, but that was my another challenge. Like, how do you unlearn to be a good student? So that was
Mhm.
one of the things I learned. And the program right now is the spiral. They can come in any of the modules, and then if they decide to, they can continue. I feel like right now that would be the most sustainable piece. If the teacher decide to go forward with MACT accreditation or to go for Montessori teacher training that requires a little bit more of a commitment, I'm probably going to give that self-agency and choice to them, teachers individually, but we still can implement onboarding and practicum, um, present some of the materials and teach some of the philosophy as a professional development. So I think, I mean, we were pretty good. I mean, honestly, we had for 12 years, we grew to 10 daycare centers, all in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And there was consistency. There were language that was, unified, understanding of child development. And I felt like it was good enough. It wasn't Montessori school. It never was intended at some point. I remember I had somebody who was coming who is Montessori, and she said, and I saw that. I'm like, that's not Montessori. And I left. I'm like, that's wonderful because that wasn't Montessori and it wasn't for you. I'm very selective who I'm actually hiring as facilitators right now because not everybody can or want to work with daycare teachers. It's like um, we forget the tenets of Montessori when we start working with adults,
Mhm.
and it's very very sad. And I've seen this over 12 years and it's with consistency, so I kind of see the pattern and I'm trying to figure out like how to break that pattern and what do we need to unlearn as Montessorians in terms of adult education.
Yeah. Sounds like what you're doing is very revolutionary. I love the emphasis on relationships, because that's what education is all about ultimately. But you're right that a lot of Montessori teacher training is very traditional in those relationships, very top down. How do you do transformation of the adult? It seems like that is one of the most, maybe the most important part of teacher training, but it's
Mhm.
also the most challenging. And I haven't seen a lot of training programs that do it well because it's hard to bring people to transformation, which is really, it's all about looking at your own trauma, right? Your own childhood baggage. And it's hard to do if you don't want to do that. If you're not aware of your own baggage, it's hard, it's invisible. And that's why it dominates. That's why it creates mischief in our lives because it's invisible. So how do you do transformation of the adult?
Well, first of all, modeling it. And second of all, being vulnerable, I guess, of your own struggles and connecting on that level that I'm not this guru on the stage. I'm actually like you. And the thing is not about the results, it's about the process. So, what is transformation? Transformation is not something where A to B. Transformation is ongoing. And I feel like 12 years later, I'm still learning. I feel like that's where I actually rephrase education with learning. And it's not education, which is more like outside in, it's more learning from the inside out. And when I rephrase it, it brings a different energy, even just for me. And that also kind of informs the way that I'm approaching the adults. And I think again, like Montessori would say, it's flame the imagination and planting seeds. We might not ever see this, but we don't see 10, 20 years later. But what can we do now? So I think right now, I definitely marry the trends right now. It's embodiment, it's somatics, which is working with the body, with movement, like looking in your body, the sensations, paying attention. So that really helps. Sometimes it is a resistance, and I think my that's why I'm betting on parents so much, because when they have a baby and they're willing to that transformation, they are seeking information to change the patterns or break generational trauma. They are ready, and in that sensitive period, I feel like that would be the best way to connect and guide them in Montessori. Now, in my newborn care, for example, I also blend in that prenatal perinatal psychology information that's been out since, I don't know, I think 60s or 70s with Emerson and all of those people from Ohio, California, who were, which I call evidence based, who were looking at the baby not just as an infant, but also even before. What does prenatal development looks like? What's pregnancy looks like? Experiences and imprints we have. And this is why I call this work multidimensional, because as you are trying to be the best parent and avoid traumatizing your children, as a lot of parents now have that language, I just don't want to traumatize my kid. You actually invite them to consider what does it feel in your body? If you, and that's where I am an educator in prenatal parent psychology, or studying to be an educator. The intention and the specific mandate I have as an educator is to have the therapist on staff as well, because some of the things will be unpacked and some of the things will be surfacing. So I'm not in a position to go further with them. Where do I outsource? And that's my doula, doula, postpartum doula preparation. Like as doula, I'm just an educator and a resource center, so to speak. If I see something, I refer to lactation consultant, or I refer to a, OT, occupational therapist. If I see something, if I see, maybe I might just get a thing that the baby have lip or tongue ties and they're struggling with latch. I'm not gonna go ahead and just provide the all of the solutions. I'm actually kind of asking questions and I'm outsourcing it. Go see a specialist now if you think you want to unpack more. So speaking of the transformation, I think that's my biggest direction that I really want to go, is working with parents from 0 to 3. And even in pregnancy, right now, I actually have parents who contact me even before they consider to conceive, because they understand as we talk, prepared environment. What is prepared environment for the baby? It's the womb. And what's the energetics? I think that's what APA, Association of Prenatal and Perinatal Psychology, teaches, which is what I was talking about earlier, Emerson and all of those people from California. They developed this evidence-based science where they look at the womb ecology that becomes world ecology. And so, I mean, it all Montessori, right? We talk about prepared adult, we talk about prepared environment. It all transfers. It just changes the shape of it. Yeah, it's not classroom and materials. It is the womb. It's still the same. And in the postpartum care and postpartum village and support of community for the mother, that's my ideal vision. I don't want to teach postpartum care to moms. I want to teach community so that they know how to support the mother. The mother doesn't need to know how to support herself. That's not her time. So what does it look like to create that prepared environment? for the mother. Like, see, it's all Montessori. And transformation is the process, I feel like, that, going back to your question, is that it starts with questions and maybe modeling. And I employ all of the modern communication channels. It's podcasts. I have coffee chats with Montessori Mom on Spotify. I employ a YouTube, so I do kind of post them on YouTube as well. It's not videos, it's just a picture with the voice. I employ social media a lot. Montessori Mama is on Instagram, and then also Zaure Vuk is kind of channels that postpartum preparation, pregnancy, newborn care, and also, LinkedIn, email. So I'm really intentional into disseminating through the channels that the people are now engaging. I'm not on, well, I'm on TikTok, but I don't connect with TikTok, honestly. So yeah, so I feel like transformation question is very, very important. And I think it's not my job to change them. That's what I think the biggest lesson I've had, because I would be like, oh my gosh, specifically in postpartum, I had so much beef, beef with doulas who are birth doulas, and they would support and accompany the mother for birth, and they like have the village, and she goes to hospital every so often for her prenatal appointments. Doulas on call, and then in the birth they come and support her. What happens after the baby is born? What happens? Mother is alone with the baby. Does doula come? No. Maybe they come for like 1 or 2 appointments. They're not even helping her. They actually go into her cognitive, asking her questions. Well, how was your birth? How do you think it went? She doesn't need that. She needs pampering. And so with me, it's like really looking at what's happening and actually offering a different way. But education is the key.
Mm.
Actually connecting the dots sometimes for people, is that what needs to be done in the accessible language that they speak in. And that's what the biggest challenge for, I think, Montessorian, for
Mm.
me included, right? Like, how do I unlearn Montessori? I actually wrote my first book to accompany the onboarding. It's called Rock and Roll Method, because our daycare was rock and roll. The also another thing is that I was bringing Montessori to a daycare culture. They didn't want it, so I repackaged it. Okay, you work in rock and roll daycare. This is a rock and roll method, and it's like all these little things, and that's what Montessori is, right? It's all about little details. So that
Mm.
was really helpful, and yeah, so I think it's just really observing and then planting seeds. But we cannot do that work for them. I remember, well, the beef will do us. I would say, and it doesn't matter how much and how, I taught for free. I would come to their childbirth education classes, but it just didn't feel like there was support from birth doulas. And I was like so angry. And I'm like, at some point, I think Margaret Whitley's book, Who Do You Choose to Be, really helped me. And
Mm.
she said in one of her chapters, it says, it's not enough for you to observe and see, right? What's the data? It's actually more important how you respond to it. And that's what the
Mm.
critics and all of that, which is Montessori as well. I feel like it's observation is half game, but also I really love quote of Montessori saying, how you see the child that's not yet there. I'm inviting Montessorians to see the adult that's not yet there,
Mm.
and how to support that.
Oh, brilliant.
Thank you.
Um, did Montessori said that that love of the parent for the child is really the only force that can change the world. It's the only force strong enough. It seems like what you're doing is really honing in on that force, that love of the parent for the child, and protecting it and nurturing it after the birth. And and then in a way that kind of unleashes that power of that love for the child on society at
Mhm.
its source.
That's definitely my passion.
Yeah. Do you
And
sleep?
I do. I mean, I think, after having 12 daycare centers in Boston, Massachusetts, you expand your capacity so much
Mhm.
that after letting that go, we actually sold it back in 2021, and we started traveling. We started going to festivals. We are traveling with kids. They're homeschooled. They're 13, 11, and I have 9-year-old twins, and I'm doing all this stuff. But I think, well, first of all, I embrace the seasons of life. That's another piece of Open Door Montessori, and my new life is that cyclical living. I discovered that when I was doing my master's degree. Um, I learn in bursts. I can read 20 books for like a month, 2 months. I assimilate it. I write down quotes. I don't just read, I study them. I write quotes, I write questions, I contemplate like a mini essay.
Mm.
And then I don't touch books for like 3, 4, 5 months. And during masters, it was a little challenging because I'm like, I need to submit my paper and I haven't written a page. And then before the deadline, I'm like, okay, I need to sit down. And I just sit down. And it would be, that cycle of like, okay, now it's output after hibernating. And I just learned how to trust myself. Like, it's okay. I'm not producing anything right now. There will be time when I produce, but I'm absorbing.
Mm.
That's what if you look at it, that's plane of developments, right? It's like the constructive and
Yeah.
then absorbing, integrating.
Mm.
Constructive, integrating. So I think once I accepted those rhythms, I'm not in my mind and I'm not so stressed. Before I
Mm.
would be so stressed and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not doing enough. I'm not studying enough. I'm not writing enough. But once I realized that, just 3 hours of sitting down after I integrated it, I could write out those 25 pages with no problem. So that really helps. And that travel, I think traveling is my definitely first passion. I love it so much. I'm
Mm.
from Kazakhstan, where this nomadic tribes have been for centuries. I actually had a joke yesterday with my cousin. She's in Prague right now, and she is from Kazakhstan. She's like, "Oh my gosh, Zoe, architecture is beautiful. All these historic buildings," and her daughter's dating the Czech guy, and she's like, and he wants to come to Kazakhstan. She's like, I don't even know what to show. And I was like kind of pondering about it. I'm like, well, yeah, we don't have those historic architecture and beautiful buildings. I'm like, no wonder we were nomadic. We just had yurts. We just, pack them and settle them wherever we go. So I think that's what, but we do have beautiful nature. Like we have all of the nature that, we have canyons, we have deserts, we have lakes and everything, and mountains. So that was interesting. But yeah, so I think that's what gives me joy and gives me energy. That brings me vitality when I'm in
Yeah.
music. I'm
What was it like immigrating to the United States? What brought you as a young 20s year olds?
Yeah, so let's see. So when I was still in college, I was doing conservatory. So I actually studied for 8 years in conservatory for a musicology degree. And at that point, I started learning English, and I really enjoyed learning English. I actually was learning English with Backstreet Boys songs. I know all of their songs. It was just so beautiful. And I was like, okay, singing and learning. And then there was this boom of work and travel programs for the students who are still in college or in university. If they speak good enough English, they could go and be in the States for the summer. I think there are two programs with camp counselors and work and travel. So camp counselors, you could go and work in a camp. And then work and travel, you could work in hospitality usually. So I did that in 20, I think first time it was 2025, and I loved it. I felt like I was at home in Cambridge. I felt like it was really, really a place where I just felt so right. Not I don't think I ever felt that even in Kazakhstan. So I really loved it. And then I came back in 2006 again for the second summer, and then I graduated. And at that point, you're not eligible for that. So I looked at the internship and I came on Arts and Artists International visa, and that's how I met my husband. I didn't plan on staying. I just kind of thought, I'm just going to spend one day of an internship and then come back. I actually had people who were interested in hiring me into like very interesting music agency. With my English, especially, was a very big plus. But then I met my husband, and I think it was really great until I started having kids, and then you see the gaps and discrepancies
Mhm.
of things that I've done differently. I mean, I had traumatic postpartum. I mean, uh, I was expected to go back to work after 6 weeks, even earlier,
Mhm.
and I couldn't fathom that because in Kazakhstan, actually, moms have 3 years of postpartum maternity leave. So in my mind, I'm like, I'm
Mhm.
done for 3 years. I'm gonna be out taking care of my baby and recovering and just enjoying life. And 6 weeks later, like people were like, no, you have to go back. You have to. Well, we were building a daycare, so it was definitely a different nature. Like you have to put in, otherwise business is not gonna move if you're not there. But that really, I think, shook me. And I was like, what's happening? So I did probably have a postpartum depression, even though I never was diagnosed. I never looked into it, but I felt like I think I did have that. So we were there for like 15, 17 years in Boston. Then we moved to Tennessee, then Orlando, Colorado Springs. I really love, I think, the humane approach to people in the States. I feel like whenever I go back, there's just human centered relationship, like wherever you go. It's not just customer service. It's
Mm.
kind of empowering. I feel like going to Europe, I was kind of trying to figure out what's different. Like we were in Germany, we were standing in line to get a ticket for the train, and the train was leaving like 5, 10 minutes. And here I am with four kids. I had twins. They were like maybe 20 months old. They had like a double stroller, and we bought the ticket from the machine, and it turned out to be a wrong ticket. So my husband kind of wanted to run to the teller to ask the question, and the teller go, no, go back in line. And actually, the teller, we did go to the teller. The teller sent us to the machine. So my husband went to the machine. It didn't work. So my husband wanted to go back. And so I was like, no, you have to go back to the back in
Mhm.
line. And I was like, are you serious right now? Like I'm sleep deprived. I'm in postpartum fog. I have four kids and you're doing that? And then I realized it's just the country that values rules,
Yeah.
right? It's like it's not wrong or right. I mean, in America, money is God, work is
Mm.
God. It's
Mm.
like what identifies you, what really is your identity, especially work. So it's different. And I've learned, I mean, thanks to Montessori again, to observe and not judge. I mean, I see a lot of Americans will come and just start, very, very negative. Oh my gosh, this is it. I'm like, don't look for America and not outside of America. So
Mm.
that really allowed me to actually appreciate cultures better
Yeah.
and observe and understand and I think allowing us to stay in one place for longer than just a week or 10 days, we stay usually for 2, 3 months in one place, allows
Mm.
us to actually experience culture from the inside out, to meet some of the people who lived here, maybe locals, maybe sometimes just immigrants as well, like myself. So it really expands the vision of I'm like I'm not just even immigrant of America at this point. I'm literally citizen of the world. I
Yeah.
love that. And we're raising four children to be that. Although they want to just live in America, they just want to stay in one place right now. But I feel like looking back, growing up, they will probably look back and appreciate these experiences.
Yeah.
Just trust the
You have
process.
such a nuanced view of different cultures, and there's good and bad. It's so true. There's good and bad in every place, every culture. I absolutely agree with you about Cambridge. It's such a dynamic place to live, and so many things going on, and definitely loved being there myself. Um, and I also really love that energy in the United States where people are free to reinvent themselves. Doesn't always happen, of course, but there's this kind of flexibility in being this dream, at least, to be able to reinvent yourself and throw away your old suit and put on a new put on a new one. And it does depend on your access to money, of course, but you know, not always.
That's what the prepared environment is. I feel like that's in terms of energy. I remember I was every time I would go to New York, I would transform, and my husband would be looking at me like, "You're just a completely different person." I'm like, "I don't know. There's just sense of hope here. I feel like it's just so amazing." And then we looked at I think, at the Statue of Liberty. I think that was the like this is the like some note on the Statue of Liberty about hope, and I was
Mm.
like, "Oh my gosh, no wonder." And yeah, it's like you're right. It's being able to think and having that freedom to reinvent yourself. I feel like, I mean, I spent 8 years in not cosmetology, but in music, in musicology. And it felt like, oh my gosh, even though I'm married to a musician, we did music daycares, it expressed differently. So I just kind of seeing these threads and having freedom to weave and blend and start over is
Mm.
definitely in culture without judgment and without any um, oh, well, actually, it depends also how you take it, because some
Yeah.
people look at us and they're like, "You're homeless. Are you out of your mind? You're in your
Right.
40s. What the heck are you doing?" So it definitely there's also that, but it's just I feel like Montessori gave me this understanding of self agency, choice, and freedom. and choosing myself. I feel like that's the biggest thing that I also talk to moms that think that dying for your child is the noble thing. Like dying meaning like, oh my gosh, I'm doing everything for the
Yeah.
child and I'm done with my own life. I feel like I'm bringing balance to that.
Yeah.
And you still have to
I think
choose.
it's hard for a lot of people these days to have hope in the United States because of the political situation and the divisions in the country. Do you have hope that Montessori can change the world?
Yes, and I think that's what I am trying to really focus on is Montessori peace education. And that's how she said, right? She was telling that peace is something that needs to be taught.
Mm,
So that's something that I'm really advocating for. And then what does peace look like within the family? What does peace look like within the self and self agency? So definitely, I mean, it's really hard for me to really connect right now with the American political system and the atmosphere because I'm in the UK now. There's Palestine stuff that's very alive, right? So there's a lot of different. When we travel, I mean, when we were in Australia, it was very different. When we were in Portugal and the Spain, for example, well, in Portugal specifically, like Uber drivers, they would talk about they actually support Trump because they value the nationality and the identity of a country, which I also understand because such an influx of people from UK and America coming to Spain and Portugal, and they have money and they buy out all the properties, and they're like, and people who are from there, they cannot afford living in their own countries. So it's
mm,
very nuanced again, right? And that's what I feel like the Montessori and just this understanding of self-transformation brings. How do you hold these polarities without attachment? That's also yoga, right? How do you
mm,
put on 100% and don't
mm,
have any? So that's what I feel the transformation is for me, and that's what I hope to to sprinkle around the world without
mm,
really having attachments or being like super upset if it's not happening.
mm,
Like
yeah.
even God doesn't do it, right? God gave us free choice. So why am I being above God and trying to push something? So
Yeah.
it's all about what I'm learning rather than what I'm
Yeah.
teaching. Yeah.
Wow, Zari, this has been a whirlwind of a conversation. Thank you so much. I know you have to be somewhere, so we need to stop.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like we could go on for 6 years and not run out of things to talk. And I didn't even give Alex or Sarah Jane or Liz a chance to ask anything. So we'll have to have you back at some point. But thank you so much for your time this evening.
Of course. This morning for
Thanks,
me. Yeah.
Zaure. Yeah.
Festival. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Alex, for being
Yeah. Enjoy.
here. So nice
Yeah.
to see you. Definitely will be gladly back, but I'm always reinventing this Montessori training. I'll definitely probably have something else to share next time. So absolutely happy to join again. And thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, well,
Thank you for your time. You're an absolute guru
Yeah.
and incredibly inspirational. Thank you so much. Boy, do we need the world full of lots of
Yeah.
yous.
On puzzle. We're doing it
No,
all.
it's true. It's true.
mm.
Yeah,
Thank you,
absolutely.
Mark.
Yes.
Mhm.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for another Montessori Lives.
Mm.
See you in a couple of weeks.
See you.